welcome to Retro Americana. I'm your host, Jeremy Scott. We got some stuff for you here today, kids. We got a film and some TV commercials. I'm really digging the TV commercials. Loving it. But we're gonna do that later. First, we're gonna check out a film from 1950 called American Cowboy, Part 1. By God, we're gonna see how a real cowboy is. Not an old West, but an old boy lives out on really a working cowboy. You know what I mean? By God. It's at the Roberson Hereford Ranch in Gunnison, Colorado. Includes scenes of a rodeo and the cattle drive. 1950, so it's real deal kind of stuff. All right, kids. So from 1950, American Cowboy Part 1. Check it out. We'll see you here in a minute.
And a sleeper.
Ride 'em, cowboy. No silver spurs, no 6 guns on his hip. It's 30 below and the wind cuts to the bone, and the cattle stand half blinded by the snow, waiting for food. Start pitching that hay, cowboy, or any herd come spring. You think a cowboy's life is romantic? Just try it in winter sometime. I had a lot of fine, fancy ideas about cowboys myself when I first came out here last spring to do a picture story about them for a magazine. I was being met by a fellow named Gus Roberson, and I remember how I stood on the station platform at Gunnison, Colorado, half expecting to see him gallop up like the Lone Ranger, shoot off a gun and drawl, "Howdy, stranger." When he arrived in a pickup truck, I found myself thinking, he doesn't look like any cowboy I ever saw. More like a businessman, or maybe a gentleman farmer. Gus saw right through me. As we drove up, he said, "I don't know what kind of a story you aim to do about cowboys, but if it's the old Wild West stuff, I'm afraid you're not going to find it around here." He was right. We drove through Gunnison, and it turned out to be strictly modern. And so was the highway that led to the ranch. Gus owns one of the finest ranches in the area. As we drove up, I saw cottonwood trees and things that looked pretty much like any well-to-do farm. Old buildings and new. The ranch was homesteaded by Gus's grandfather. Each generation has built it up a little more. Gus introduced me to a couple of his right-hand men, and I began to change my idea of how a cowboy really looks. We walked around looking the place. It's smaller than I thought it would be, only a few hundred acres of meadowland. But Gus told me that's all you need out here, because the cattle are moved to government-owned ranges as the seasons change, depending on where the pasture is best at that time of year. While we were talking, up rode a fellow who looked more like my idea of a real cowboy. First person I'd seen on a horse since I came west. but it turned out to be Tony Buffano, which of course no real cowboy is named. And when I saw him roll a cigarette with both hands instead of one, I was really sad. Gus wanted me to go for a ride around the ranch, and there was no way I could get out of it. I put on my brand new blues and went out like a steer going to slaughter. Now, the horse is a noble animal, too high off the ground. You fall off a horse, it's like falling out of a second-story window. This horse they had picked for me was just a little short of 3 stories. Take it easy, Gus said. She's a little nervous. She's got nothing on me, I told him. I just made it to the saddle, and when I looked down at the ground, I wished I was back in Detroit. The horses walked for a while, and Gus told me how Gunnison lies just west of the Great Divide, in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. Then my horse began to trot, and I was too busy hanging on to listen. But even on a horse, I could see that this was great country. Then we stopped, and I had my first good look around the range. Sort of took my breath away. Immense and quiet, with the wind whispering in the grass, and the mountain peaks towering against the sky. I got my first look at cowboys in action when I went out to take pictures of them branding calves. And now it began to look more like the Old West. Cattle still have to be branded as a precaution against getting lost, strayed, or stolen. The brand is the owner's identification mark. Branding burns away the hair and only sears the skin enough to leave a scar. The Roberson brand is the quarter circle L. A brand can be changed, so as an added precaution, the calf is earmarked. At the same time, it is dehorned by applying a paste which eats the horn away. Each calf is inspected for pink eye and inoculated against blackleg, a disease which used to wipe out whole herds before the serum was discovered. Gus had a calf of his own in the corral that morning, his son, learning the business, the 4th generation. It was rough, hard work, but Gus was right in there sweating it out with the other cowboys.